بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، وعلى إخوانه من النبيين، وعلى الصحابة أجمعين، وعلى كل من اهتدى بهديهم وسار على سنتهم إلى يوم الدين. أيها المشاهدون الفضلاء ومشاهدات الفضليات، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرحب بكم جميعا ضمن حلقة جديدة من حلقات برنامج رمضان شهر السلام، الذي ينظمه منتدى أبو ظبي للسلم في شهر رمضان المبارك، شهر السلام وشهر القرآن وشهر الرحمة. ونستضيف اليوم في رابع هذه الحلقات فضيلة الشيخ حمزة يوسف. وشيخنا سيدي حمزة يوسف أشهر من نار على علم، وأشهر من أن يعرف به وبآثاره الطيبة في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وفي غيرها من أقطار العالم. يحدثنا اليوم في هذه المحاضرة العلمية عن موضوع السلام وروح رمضان. نحيل إليه الكلمة، فليتفضل مشكورا.
دير لافيش اطفى الكاميرا ومشي. خلي لافيش
السلام عليكم. أنا لازم أصلي الصبح. أنا كنت أصلي الفجر الآن، لازم يعني لأن ما صليت الصبح.
نعم، ننتظركم إن شاء الله، ننتظركم.
شيء
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. سيدي الكريم، تفضلوا بإلقاء محاضرتكم.
الله يبارك فيك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. الحمد لله على نعم الله سبحانه وتعالى وعلى نعمة شهر رمضان، شهر الصيام والقيام. الحمد لله. أهنيكم جميعا بهذا الشهر الفاضل الذي الله سبحانه وتعالى أكرمنا به. Alhamdulillah. First of all, just want to thank the forum for the work that they do, and to have included me in some of that work in some modest capacity. I think one of the most important things that Sheikh Abdullah has brought to the forefront of a lot of people's minds is the importance of salam, of peace. And I think it's a very appropriate title for a theme, which is Ramadan, the month of peace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Qadr reminds us that it's salam hiya hatta matla' al-fajr, that this is the night of power, which is in the blessed month of Ramadan, is a night that peace is descending until the actual dawn of the Fajr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a tahiyyah in our religion. He replaced the tahiyyah of the Jahili people, which was to say things like an'am sabahan, an'am masa'an, which interestingly is very European also. We say good morning, guten Tag, guten Morgen. You know, there are different ways of the Europeans. They say good morning, good evening. And the Prophet ﷺ, when people would use the Jahili greeting of good morning or good evening, the Prophet ﷺ would tell them that Allah has replaced it with a better greeting, which is the tahiyyah of Assalamu alaikum, which is peace be upon you. The Prophet ﷺ also said that if you want love, none of you would believe. لا تؤمنوا حتى تحبوا. You will not believe until you love. And he said that ألا أدلكم على شيء إذا فعلتموه تحاببتم في الله. Can I tell you about a thing that if you do it, you will love one another? And they asked him what that was, and he said, أبشوا السلام بينكم. Spread peace amongst you. Now, obviously, that means the tahiyyah itself, but it also means just the phenomenon of being a peaceful person, of spreading peace. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described his servants, he called them Ibadur Rahman. And he said that they الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا, they walk humbly on the earth. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And when ignorant people or zealous people greet them or engage with them, they just say peace. And I think that's a very important distinction, because the word jahil, what it means is a lot of people think that it's yuqabiluhu al-aqil or al-alim, but what really yuqabiluhu or what corresponds to it as an opposite in the Arabic language is halim. And halim is somebody that controls themselves, especially in the presence of some type of provocation. So the halim is the one who has control of their nafs, of their ego. And so the jahil is the opposite. It's somebody who's very zealous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the people of Jahiliyyah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they إذ جعل الذين كفروا في قلوبهم الحمية حمية الجاهلية. When the Muslims were confronting the kuffar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in their hearts was this hamiyat al-jahiliya. And so people think that this is about ignorance, but it's not about ignorance in the sense of not knowing something. It's about ignorance in the sense of not being able to control oneself. That's the true ignoramus. That's the true person who is ignorant in our religion. It's not the person that people can have lots of knowledge and they can learn many things, but if they can't control themselves, they're jahil in our understanding. And so the muqabala of jahl with halim is extremely important. And the asr al-jahiliya is not a time period, although it refers to a time period. Jahiliya is a state. It's a state of being. And so any time in which people no longer control themselves, they're actually jahili people. And that's why even though al-jahiliyat al-ula can refer specifically to that time, there is a riwayah from Ibn Abbas when he was asked about why it said ula, he said every ula has a thaniya. And so, in other words, that this age of Jahiliyyah will return. And the Prophet ﷺ described the latter days in which people would resort back. And he said, "La tarji'u ba'di kuffara." Don't after me, don't resort back, don't regress back as ingrates. Kuffara. It doesn't mean kafir there. It means somebody who's an ingrate, somebody who's not grateful for the blessings of peace. Because asbahtum bi ni'matihi ikhwana, you became by his blessing brothers. So if you resort back to jahiliyyah, you'll start fighting one another again. And we see these fitan everywhere. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he warned us about these things. So the jahil is the person who loses that ability or never worked on himself to the point where he had the ability to be a person of inner peace. Because you cannot have outer peace if you don't have inner peace. And this is why the month of Ramadan is learning to control oneself. And so it's really a purging of those jahili impulses. And this is the only way you will get salam in the world, is when people purge the jahiliyyah from their hearts. And so the age of ignorance is upon us. People are resorting back to this jahili attitude where everybody's aggressive, everybody's angry, people don't have patience. When Fir'aun began to kill the sons of Bani Israel, and they يذبحون أبناءهم ويستحيون نساءهم, they came to Musa alayhi salam. In more than one place in the Quran it mentions this. They came to Musa, and what did he tell them? He says, "Asta'inu billahi wasbiru." Be, have isti'ana with Allah and be patient. Patience, one of the most central qualities of patience is habsun nafs. It's the ability to control oneself. If you cannot control yourself, you can't be patient. So that's why you have this faza'. Inna al-insana khuliqa halu'a. Like people are in a state of hala'. And hala' is a type of agitation. So people are agitated without prayer. And it's the prayer and it's the centrality of this ibadah that we do, and a reminder of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that enables us to have this inner peace. And that's why people that actually practice this religion, they don't have the same troubles. They don't have the same anxieties. They don't have the same disturbances. So it's really important to just recognize that Ramadan is a time of learning to control oneself. And the only way that we will achieve peace is when people can control themselves. Recently in Florida, there was a road rage incident where two people had an altercation, and one of them just shot into this car 11 shots and killed the woman who was driving, and the daughter now is in critical condition. That is the essence of jahiliyyah. Somebody gets angry and then they just react with rage. This is the hamiyat al-jahiliyyah. And this is why the jahil person is the most dangerous person in the world. The Arabs say, "Aduun aqil la sadiqun jahil." give me a intelligent enemy, but not a jahil friend. And this is really at the heart of what's causing all the problems in the world, is this jahiliya impulse. Another thing, the Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Medina, the Aus and the Khazraj, these are these two tribes from Kahlan. They were originally Yemeni tribes, and like many tribal peoples, they had, even though they were cousins, they had rivalries, and they had these type of skirmishes that would flare up every once in a while, and they would end up fighting, and sometimes somebody would be killed, or something would happen, and this led to this continual conflict in the city. And so one of the reasons why they wanted the Prophet ﷺ to come is to resolve the conflicts between the Aus and the Khazraj. So when the Prophet ﷺ actually came to the city, these people, because of Islam, they became brothers, and an amazing harmony began to manifest in a city that had been plagued with this Jahili conflict before the Prophet ﷺ came. Well, there was one older person who lived in Medina who didn't become Muslim, and he was actually disturbed by the harmony. Like, it really bothered him that these two tribes were coming together, and the Prophet ﷺ had united them. And so he actually hired this Jewish reciter, a Rawi, to go amongst them and start reciting the poetry of Yom Bu'ath when they used to fight, because each tribe would recite poetry boasting against the other tribe. And because of that, the Aus and the Khazraj were reminded of the days of Jahiliyyah, and that Jahili energy started to emerge. In fact, one of the words Jahiliyyah, Jahilat al-Qudur, the pots boiled over. That's one of the meanings of the Arabic word Jahilat al-Qudur, means the pots boiled over. So the Jahiliyyah is a kind of hayajan. It's a kind of boiling over in the self that occurs. And when this happened, the Prophet said they were ready to fight. They actually said, get your weapons and we'll meet you in this valley, and said they were going to go to fight after being united with the Prophet. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard this, he immediately went and he got them together and he said, are you doing this? Are you doing this and I'm in your presence? I'm in your midst after Allah brought you together? And he reminded them of the ni'mah that they'd been given, and suddenly they're all crying and hugging one another, because that Jahiliyyah subsided. The Prophet brought them back to the presence of Allah. And this is what is missing, because the fitna is na'ima. The fitna is always there, and it's na'ima. That it's like all you need is flint to strike, and it erupts. And that's why la'an Allah man ayqadhaha, damn the one who ignites that fitna, because people are easily susceptible to falling into fitna. And so if you don't have that internal peace, if and that's why even Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu, when he got angry at one of the Muslims who was dark, I mean in Riwayat Bilal radiallahu anhu, and he said Ya ibn Sauda, which is akin to calling in our culture, there's certain derogatory words for blacks. So it was akin to really calling him by a derogatory name because of the color of his skin. And when the Prophet heard this, he said, Anta imru'un fika al-jahiliyyah. You're a man who has some jahiliyyah in him. In other words, you haven't been completely purified of these jahili traits. And this, we all have qualities that are negative. And this is the jahiliyyah that resides within us. And so the process of removing this jahiliyyah, which takes time and effort, The great scholar and teacher of Imam Malik radiallahu anhu, Ibn al-Munkadir, he said, "Jahadtu nafsi 50 sana hatta istaqamat li." I fought myself for 50 years until it finally was upright for me. And so it takes a long time, but there has to be mujahada. This is, and here's the irony, is that jihad can only come from real jihad. We're talking about the jihad that إذا خرجتم جهادا في سبيل الله. If you go out jihadan fi sabilillah, that in that ayah, jihadan is maf'ulan li ajlihi. It's the reason you're going out is jihad. One of the 5 necessary conditions of maf'ulan li ajlihi is that it's min a'mal al-qalb. So the jihad is in the heart. The jihad is not the physical. Anybody can fight. The jihad is in the heart. Why are you doing it? And this is why if there's not the niyyah to bring peace in your efforts, it's not jihad. And that's why the mujahada of the self is to bring peace into the soul. You're struggling with yourself so that yourself is no longer at war with your Lord. And this is why it's so important to maintain mujahada. There's no jihad without mujahada. You can have wars, but that's not jihad. And this is the real trouble in our world, is that there's people don't struggle with themselves. And at the heart of Ramadan is this struggle with the soul, controlling your appetites, controlling your anger. If somebody does something that you would normally get mad, what do you say? Allahumma inni sa'im. I'm fasting. Like you're letting them know I can't react. That is to train the soul so that in the other months of the year you're able to control yourself. And so this month is the month of peace because you're at peace with yourself. You are controlling yourself. And that's why it's a tragedy that this is a month now where so many Muslims eat more than they do the rest of the year. They're not actually practicing the month as it's meant to be practiced. You should be losing weight in Ramadan. There's people that gain weight in Ramadan. You should be losing weight in Ramadan. You should not be getting angry. There's people that get angry. In English now they have this word hangry, which is people who are hungry and it makes them angry. So they say hangry. That when people haven't eaten, they get angry. And that's why if you can maintain your anger when you're hungry, that it's going to be much easier when you're not. So all of this is struggles with the self. I wanted to look because it's very interesting. One of my favorite books is the Mufradat fi Gharib al-Quran of the great scholar Raghib al-Asfahani. And Raghib was, I think, a master of the self. And he wrote a very famous book called Ad-Dhari'atu ila Makarim al-Sharia. I think it's one of the most important books in the Islamic tradition. And in that book, he's really giving people asalib, like the means, the adawat, the ma'rifah, the knowledge to attain what he calls the khilafah in the earth, like to be a true khalifa, that every human being should be aligned with their Lord and a khalifa. And so he also wrote another book, which is Tafsil al-Nash'atain, which is about the two sa'adas, the sa'ada of the dunya and the sa'ada of the akhirah, the two felicities. And في تفصيل النشأتين في تحصيل السعادتين, which is almost like a khulasa of the Dhari'a. It has a lot of the same arguments. It's a much shorter book. But he also wrote one of the most important books in understanding the language of the Quran. And this is why it's so important to understand the language, because when I was talking about jahiliyyah, people think jahiliyyah is ignorance. But it's not ignorance in the sense of not having knowledge, because there are many jahil people that have plenty of knowledge. They can learn all the hadiths, they can learn all the ayahs, they can quote everything, but they're still a jahil human being, because when push comes to shove, they don't have self-control. And that's the essence of the jahil person. And so the halim, which is one of the words in Arabic for intellect, is ahlam. You know, the uqul are the ahlam. The Prophet ﷺ was accused of yusaffihu ahlamana. He's making our intellects like yusaffihu. He's making it like we're sufaha, like we're fools. And so the halim is the one who calms down. In fact, the Arabs say tatahallam al-qudur. The pots calm down after they boiled over. After إذا جهدت القرور تتحلم. After they boil over, they calm down. And so the halim is the one who's calm. This is what's called equanimity. It's in our language, in the English language, equanimity means that the soul is balanced. The soul is even, from equa and animus, even soul. In other words, they don't go up and down. They don't react. So he wrote this book, Gharib al-Quran, Alfaz al-Quran, which is about the real meanings of the words, because you cannot penetrate the Quran without really understanding one, grammar, two, balagha, rhetoric, but three, lugha, which is the actual words that the Quran is composed of, and understanding them in their semantic fields, because they have different meanings. We have the different levels that we understand the words on, because you have the wada', you have the isti'mal, and you have the hamal. So like if I say, إذا سميت رجلا مثلا زيدا, if I call a man Zayd, that وضع لهذا, that's what it was made for. The name was made for. The isti'mal, the use of it, can be either majaz, figurative, or it can be literal. It can be either haqiqa or majaz. That's the isti'mal. And then the hamal is how we interpret it. So when Malik radiallahu anhu, Imam al-Qarafi says, when Malik heard qur', he understood it to be tahar. But when Abu Hanifa heard qur' in the Quran, he understood it to be the hayd itself, the menstruation. So it's what you understand from the word. So it's very important to understand the words of the Quran. And so he says under salima, yaslamu, which is where we get the word peace from, he says that it's ta'arri min al-afat al-zahirati wal-batina. It's to be free of the faults, the inner faults and the outer faults. You see, so real salam is being free of the faults of the self. And this is why when you're not free of these faults, you're not in a state of peace. You can't be in a state of peace with yourself. And that's why akhlaq is about taking on these qualities until they become our nature. So we have to, there's like a takallum, innama ta'lumu, innama al-ilmu bit-ta'allum. Knowledge is by acquiring. Ta'allum is tafa'ul, yatakallaf, like you have to learn knowledge. Wa innama al-hilmu bit-tahallum. And learning equanimity, learning the hilm, learning to be halim is done with effort. And so you have to work on it until it becomes your nature. And so he says, بقلب سليم أي متعر من الدغل فهذا في الباطن. So قلب سليم يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. The one who his wealth and his children will not avail him, they won't help him unless he comes to Allah with a sound heart. And that's a heart that's free of daghal. It's free of all these sicknesses. The fi qulubihim marad. فزادهم الله مرضا. And what's the shifa? ننزل من القرآن ما هو شفاء. We reveal this Quran as a healing. And this is, Ramadan is a month of healing, to heal our hearts by taking on the qualities of the Quran. كان خلقه القرآن. His character was the Quran sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the Quran walking. He embodied these things. إذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما. When Aisha radiallahu anhu, some Yahud passed by and they said Salam alaikum, which is like al-maut alayk, or and the Prophet said wa alaykum, and on you. He didn't say Sam, he just said wa alaykum, so they were using this to, but Aisha understood it. She got very angry and she actually cursed them. And the Prophet told her, not to do that. So he was teaching her, don't do more. And he just said wa alaykum. He just gave it back to them. So and then he says in the Zahir, musallamatun la shiyata fiha. When the Baqarah, they asked to what type of Baqarah, it was musallama, free of any faults. It had no fault. So that's in the Zahir, he says. And so he says, Salima yaslamu salamatan wa salaman wa sallamuhu Allah wa lakin Allah sallam qad udkhulu bi salamin aminin. Enter with peace in a state of security. And so as-salam al-haqiqiyya laysa illa fil jannah. The true peace is only in paradise. And that's why the first thing that people do when they enter paradise is they just repeat over and over again, salam, 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 and qawlun min Rabbir Rahim. This is a word from the generous Lord. And so peace is, Islam is calling to Darus Salam, the abode of peace. And it's very interesting that was the name that they gave. That's the name of Jerusalem. It's supposed to be a place of peace. It's the name of, it was traditionally one of the names of Baghdad. Wherever Muslims went, they were supposed to bring peace. But you can't, if you're not in a peaceful state, you can't bring peace. And so this is a month where we're supposed to be reminded once again of what this is all about. And it's about spreading peace. Afshu salam. And I'll end with a very interesting experience that I had, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, that if you spread peace, he said, you will love one another. And in the end of the day, Islam is about mahabba. It's about love of God, and it's about love of God's creation. We're not supposed to be hateful people. The Prophet didn't hate anybody. He hated bad actions. He hated kufr, but he wanted good for humanity. He wanted good for everybody. He wanted everyone to enter into a state of peace with their Lord. And that's why even his worst enemies became his brothers in the religion. Hind, who bit into his uncle's liver, he sat with her and accepted her Islam. Wahshi, who actually killed his beloved uncle Hamzah, he sat with him and he accepted his Islam. The Prophet, he didn't hold any hiqad in his heart. There was no resentment. His heart was free of blemish. This is our Prophet. He's Habibullah. That's the description that he was given, was Habibullah. He's the beloved and he's the lover of God. And you cannot love God without loving God's creation. It's not possible, because everything is from Allah. And so in the end, you just see that this is Allah's creation. He created the good, the bad, and the ugly. He created all of these people, and he brought them here for a purpose. Even our enemies are here for a purpose and for a reason. And it's how we'll treat people. And that's why our greatest moments are those moments when the Muslims had victory over their enemies and the largesse that they showed. The Prophet, one of the greatest moments in the history of the Prophet's religion is when he marched triumphantly into Mecca with his head bowed down. And when they asked him what he was going to do, he gave them the answer of Joseph عليه السلام لا تثريب عليكم اليوم قد غفرت لكم. There's no fault. I find no fault in you today. I've forgiven you. And this is why the safah and the ghufran, these are very important qualities. So you have afu, safah, and ghufran. Afu is to pardon, but safah is actually to forgive them. And then ghufran is actually to veil the fact that you don't even talk about what they did to you. So this is our Prophet ﷺ. I was in the haram many years ago with a beloved brother from Al-Ahsa, Sheikh Abdullah Al-Qadi. And I used to go into the same door every morning in the haram. And there was a man there. He was one of the guards, the haras. And I came in and I said to him, "Salam alaikum," and he kind of said, "Wa alaikum," and just he gave me it wasn't a friendly salam. He just kind of gave a grumpy salam. And I came the next morning. I saw him. I said, "Salam alaikum," and I smiled. And he said, "Wa alaikum," same type thing. And then the next morning I came and he saw me again, and I smiled, said, "Salam alaikum," and he smiled and he said, "Wa alaikum." On the fourth morning, I came and I said, "Salam alaikum," and he came and he hugged me. And he literally came and the lesson I learned from that was when the Prophet ﷺ said, "Afshu salam bainakum," it's not something that happens instantaneously. It's not going to happen instantly. We're not all suddenly going to love one another. It's something that you have to work on and be consistent about it, and not react to the negativity of people. But just the Prophet wore them down with mahabba. He wore them down with patience. He wore them down with hilm. These are the things that he conquered them with. He didn't conquer them with the sword. He conquered them with love. Alhamdulillah.
شيخنا البث معكم؟
نعم.
البث معكم؟
أيوة انتهيت.
أيوة خلاص الحمد لله. نشكر لكم شيخنا الجليل على هذه الكلمة التي طوفت بنا في عوالم روحية سامية تنم إن شاء الله عن صدق قلب قائلها. نحسبه كذلك والله حسيبنا جميعا. وقد جليتم جانبا كبيرا من قيم السلام المرتبطة بهذا الشهر الفضيل شهر رمضان، رغم فارق التوقيت بيننا وبينكم وعلى المشقة التي حملناكم إياها. فنسأل الله أن يبارك في جهودكم وصحتكم وأعمالكم، كما نسأله جل جلاله أن يجعلنا وإياكم من المقبولين المغفور لهم والمرحومين والعتقاء من النار، وأن يجعلنا وإياكم جميعا من أهل دار السلام، إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. نجدد الشكر كذلك للسادة المشاهدين والمشاهدات على حسن متابعتهم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.